Of all the tools available to help manage type 2 diabetes, Metformin stands as one of the most reliable and commonly used. It's a medication that's been around for decades, prescribed to millions of people around the world. If you're one of them, you probably know a bit about how it helps to regulate blood sugar by making the body more sensitive to insulin and by reducing the amount of glucose your liver releases. It sounds like a straightforward medication that fits into daily routines, but there's more beneath the surface.
Before we continue, I'd like to tell you about Diasalon, a powerful blend of 13 natural ingredients, each carefully selected for their proven ability to support healthy blood sugar levels, enhance insulin sensitivity, and promote overall wellness. You can read more on diasalon.com.
Metformin is often considered the first-line defense in managing type 2 diabetes. But like any medication, metformin comes with its own set of precautions and potential side effects. For most people, these side effects are mild and include things like an upset stomach, nausea, or a bit of fatigue as the body gets used to the new regimen. These are the inconveniences many patients are willing to tolerate for the benefits metformin provides. After all, stabilizing blood sugar is critical to avoid the longer-term risks of diabetes, such as heart disease, nerve damage, and other complications that can reduce quality of life. But, and it's a big but, not all of the potential risks associated with metformin are as straightforward as its common side effects. The liver is where things get complicated. This is because metformin plays an essential role in affecting the liver's glucose production, helping keep sugar levels steady. In that way, the liver is a key part of the metformin story, doing much of the heavy lifting when it comes to managing glucose. While most people think of the pancreas when they think of diabetes, the liver is also working behind the scenes, involved in storing, producing, and releasing glucose as needed. In short, the liver has a lot on its plate. The liver's workload doesn't end there, though. It's also in charge of metabolizing a lot of substances that come into the body. Think of it as a central processing unit that sorts out everything you put in, deciding what stays, what gets transformed, and what has to go. All of this happens to maintain a balance that keeps you healthy. Metformin asks the liver to make some adjustments regarding glucose, and, under normal conditions, the liver can handle it. When you introduce other elements that also rely heavily on the liver, things can start to go wrong. Let's talk about one in particular: alcohol. Alcohol, like metformin, is metabolized in the liver. It takes precedence because, to the body, it's treated as a toxin, something that needs to be cleared away as soon as possible. When you have alcohol and metformin in the system at the same time, it creates a complex situation for the liver. On one hand, the liver is supposed to help regulate glucose and ensure metformin does its job. On the other hand, it must urgently work to get rid of alcohol. The liver simply doesn't have the ability to multitask in this case, and the consequences can be unpredictable and serious. Let's explore what happens in the body. One of the risks when these two substances mix is hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar levels. This is because alcohol affects glucose production, and, when paired with metformin, it can suppress glucose output to a level that's lower than what's safe. The tricky part is that the symptoms of hypoglycemia, such as dizziness, sweating, confusion, and shakiness, can be mistaken for just feeling a bit tipsy. It can be easy to brush off these signs and continue having a good time, but what's actually happening is that your body is crying out for help. Hypoglycemia can escalate quickly, and, if not treated, it can lead to severe outcomes, including seizures and unconsciousness. Another aspect of alcohol that complicates metformin use is its effect on the gastrointestinal tract. For those who've been on metformin, you might already know that gastrointestinal issues can be part of the experience. Upset stomach, nausea, diarrhea. These symptoms are common, especially when first starting the medication. Now, imagine throwing alcohol into the mix, which is already known to be irritating to the stomach lining. Alcohol can exacerbate these symptoms, making them far more intense. It's not a matter of maybe this will happen, but more of a likelihood. The combination tends to overwhelm the digestive system, leading to discomfort and unpredictable side effects that can put a serious damper on whatever plans you had for the day or evening. One of the lesser discussed, yet incredibly serious risks is lactic acidosis. This is a rare but dangerous condition that occurs when lactic acid builds up in the bloodstream faster than it can be removed. Usually, metformin does its job without causing any trouble, but when alcohol is added, it increases the production of lactic acid and at the same time prevents the liver from clearing it effectively. The symptoms of lactic acidosis are subtle at first: muscle pain, trouble breathing, extreme fatigue, but these can escalate quickly if not treated. And what's worrying is how easily they can be mistaken for something else, like simply being tired or having had too much to drink. This misinterpretation can delay getting the help that's needed. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism showed a direct link between alcohol consumption and an increased risk of lactic acidosis in patients taking metformin. The study highlighted that alcohol changes the way the body metabolizes glucose and lactic acid, leading to an environment where acidosis can occur. It's not something that happens every time someone drinks while on metformin, but the possibility is there, and the consequences are severe enough to make it something to avoid entirely. Even if the immediate risks aren't enough to deter someone, there are cumulative effects to think about. For people who continue to drink alcohol while on metformin, there is the long-term danger of liver damage. Alcohol and metformin both require the liver to work harder, and over time, this can lead to liver strain or fatty liver disease. This condition is particularly dangerous for those with diabetes because it worsens insulin resistance, making diabetes more difficult to control. It's a situation where the body's ability to regulate glucose gets progressively worse, and by the time the liver starts to show signs of damage, the decline can be significant. Think of the liver as a gatekeeper that's managing various elements coming through: alcohol, glucose, toxins, and medications. Metformin is already asking the liver to do a specific job, regulating glucose to keep diabetes in check. When alcohol is added to the mix, it disrupts the balance, forces the liver to prioritize detoxification, and ultimately reduces its ability to handle everything else effectively. This means glucose control takes a back seat, which can lead to spikes and crashes that make managing diabetes increasingly challenging. Another issue with alcohol is dehydration, which can amplify the risks when mixed with metformin. Alcohol is a diuretic, meaning it encourages the body to lose fluids, and dehydration has a direct effect on blood sugar levels. When the body is dehydrated, blood sugar levels can become more difficult to control, and it can also affect how efficiently the body metabolizes metformin. Essentially, dehydration can lead to higher concentrations of metformin in the body, which in turn increases the likelihood of experiencing its side effects. Dehydration also stresses the kidneys, another organ involved in filtering substances from the bloodstream, making the entire system more vulnerable to strain. Social settings where drinking is common can be particularly dangerous for someone on metformin. At gatherings like parties, dinners, or holidays, it's easy to lose track of how much you've had to drink, and it's even easier to dismiss symptoms that might arise. People around you may not realize that what looks like mild intoxication could actually be the early signs of hypoglycemia or lactic acidosis. This makes it all the more important to be mindful of your situation and avoid putting yourself at unnecessary risk. It's one thing to manage diabetes on a day-to-day basis with a stable routine, but it's another to throw caution to the wind in social situations where temptations and distractions are plentiful. What's surprising is that some people can drink while taking metformin and not feel any immediate side effects. This can lead to a false sense of security that everything is fine. The body is pretty good at compensating, until it isn't. Long-term effects like liver damage and fatty liver disease develop silently, and often without any noticeable symptoms until they reach a point where they're much more challenging to manage. When the liver begins to show signs of damage, it's often too late to easily reverse the situation, and the individual is left dealing with complications that could have been avoided. And here's the twist that you really need to keep in mind. The cumulative impact of alcohol and metformin is not just about the occasional risk of a hypoglycemic episode or an upset stomach. The real issue is that these repeated risks eventually wear down the body's natural defenses. The liver, the kidneys, even the digestive system, they all have limits. Mixing alcohol and metformin doesn't just present short-term dangers. It accelerates the decline in these organs' functionality. The liver, trying to manage both alcohol detoxification and glucose regulation, can eventually develop chronic issues that make diabetes far harder to control. And by then, the window for preventing serious complications has already started to close. In short, mixing metformin and alcohol is not just a one-time risky decision. It's a situation that leads to both immediate health hazards and long-term organ damage that can make living with diabetes much harder. The risks are real, and while they might not be apparent right away, they accumulate in the background until one day they become impossible to ignore. So, while the idea of moderation might seem like a safe approach, when it comes to metformin and alcohol, the stakes are just too high.